Okay. So, I should be live now. Um, there's a huge delay, but that's okay. Um, so I thought I would do another live stream. For those who care about what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue what I was doing. So in this simple tour route that I got here, I am needing to use my new logger wrapper function to log out when there's an error, and not only that, but I want to know when the data that I query is empty. So if the database comes back with an array of nothing, or an empty JSON object, I kind of want to know that so I can respond appropriately. So I'm going to go ahead and do an if statement here, and then I'll put my condition as the data parameter equal, and if the data object is empty or equals 0, I'm not sure if that's actually going to work, but we will see. I want to log something out to the console, so I'll go ahead and use my logger wrapper. I will pass it a string. I'm going to do string literals because why not? So I want to log the requested location has let's see, should I do a variable? I don't know if I want this, but let's see, variable data.length. Oh, yeah, of course that's not going to work. So if I want the condition, I want data.length. So I've done that. Now I want to put that squiggly brace back because it's yelling at me, rightfully so. Yep, so if data.length equals 0, I want to log the requested location has 0 tours. We'll just do that. So there's an error on line 57 because I got too many of something. So why did it remove my curly brace up here? Weird. Okay, so now it should be restarting. Ooh, server restarting. So okay, so let's go ahead and try query something. Make sure that it still works. So I'll query something real. So Christmas, it responds with that, and it logs out the JSON object and says tours for Christmas, or tours for location Christmas, two tours returned. So let's go ahead and try do a query that's going to return nothing. It's going to be an array of nothing, not actual. It's not going to be a null value. Although we might, there might be beneficial to set it as null for clarity. Let's go ahead and do that. So it's going to come back with nothing, and obviously you can see that the handler that I wrote did not did not come back with what I expected. I'm wondering if it's because, let's see. Yeah, the request. Oh, wait. I lied. It did work the way I wanted it to. So, but as you can see, it still printed out the tours for location, well, as if it didn't break out of that. So basically, what I need to do in this right here is I need to then break, maybe not break, let's do next. I think that's what I'll need to do. Let's go ahead and try that now. Yeah, no, definitely not. I think I haven't really used next a lot. Let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, no, that's not going to work. Oh, you know what I probably need to do is return. Let's see if that wants to work for me. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it works the way I want it to. It returns and does not run the other code. The reason why this postman, though, is just sitting there saying loading, is because I literally just jumped out of the code, kind of the rest of the code block that is responsible for sending the response to the client. So what I need to do is in this handler, I need to go here. Let me refactor a little bit, format, save that. What I need to do is if data.length equals 0, I need to respond, and I kind of wanted this to be a soft error. I don't want it to send any type of error code or anything like that. I just want to know that it equals 0 and have that response to be able to be parsed. So that way later on when I'm writing the view, I can kind of change the formatting based on whether there was data returned or not in the template. So I'm going to do response rest.json, and then in there I want to send a JSON object, and I will say let's see, do I want error? I don't know if I do. Error, and let's go ahead and copy the top of that and what I'm going to the log with. So the requested location has, see, what I'm gonna need to do is I'm gonna have to have string literals. I haven't done this before with a JSON response, so this is going to be new. For this to be valid JSON, I'm still going to need these quotation marks, the double quotations. So I'm going to not replace those, but what I'm going to do is I am going to write the string literals are great. The requested location has, and then I'm going to want to pass a variable, data.length, and this just looks beautiful because I don't have to. You don't have to do the string concatenation anymore that you used to, and it just looked completely ugly. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And so now, when we get the response from the server, it should, it shouldn't hang because we have, we'll now get a response. So we'll go ahead and do that, and boom, it works. The requested responds with error. The requested location has 0 tours. So yeah, so that's pretty interesting. And something I might want to add is maybe like a status key. So I have the error key and then the value for error, which is the request location has 0 tours, or whatever that may be. But I'll probably want to add a status. So that way I can kind of, and that might be like a Boolean value. So that way I can do a quick check if if status is or if valid response is false. I could do something like that, so it'd be easy. So I could do some conditional formatting on my view and only show data when there is actual data to show, and then when there isn't, to show some cat meme or a meme of that that girl going, I don't know where it is, something hilarious like that. So I'm do that. So now we got that. So we have it. Actually, we haven't tested whether this would log as an error, and we also have not passed the log type, which we want this to be an error. So as we can see right now, it says the requested location has 0 tours, but it's just white and very boring looking. So let's go ahead and add the second argument, and it wants to pass a string, and here you can see string. I've added these IntelliSense kind of hints, so when you're using this kind of mini library, you can kind of get an idea of what is available. So there's good info, warning, and error. So this is an error type. So we passed that, and so now if we do this again, it will, of course, yep, the requested location has 0 tours, and it will highlight it in red with black text and and the fire emoji. So that is good, but I also kind of want to add, I forgot to do this, error, like that. So now everything will match. So we'll respond to the client with error that, and then we'll log it to the console. Error, the requested location has 0 tours. That may be a little bit too verbose, and I think I'm going to add some layers to show kind of in my logging function. I think there's the library I'm using to do all the color and stuff like that. I think it has an ability to change the level of notifications. That way I'm not getting like a billion different error messages. So if I don't want to, I can kind of change that in my npm start script and kind of control the verbosity of it. Yeah, so that is good. What do I want to do next? So I have this function will take one thing I need to figure out right now. This is the root, so the first root in the API /tours routes. This is basically the root of it. So I'm curious to see if I want to name this something different, like for example, by location, or something like that. So I'm going to do by location. That way it's a little bit more distinct, and that way I don't basically take up my root route. Oh, that's weird. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now I'm going to save that, and I'm going to update this. So it's API localhost 3000 API tours, and then I want to add by location. I already forgot what it wrote. So I want to do by location. So actually, let me remove that and try do it now, and it should respond with error. Okay, so yep, cannot get API/tours because there isn't a route that handles that. So let's go ahead and put that back, and let's do send, and boom, the requested location has 0 tours. So we're back in business. So let me actually get a valid response. So boom. Okay, so now I get the tour with location Christmas, and everything's happy. I forgot. I'm logging right here. I'm logging the JSON because I was just kind of debugging. So let me remove that because that just clutters my whole console. Let's clear that and nodemon server. And if you don't know, normally you can start a node server by doing node and then the file name that's the entry point to your app. But nodemon is cool because what it does is it watches your file system. So as soon as you make a change to a file and save it, it will restart the server. Obviously, so it won't do that if it's like an HTML file, and it's very configurable. So it will only do it if it's a file that affects basically your server code. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure everything's saved and do that. And yep, server running again. So let's go ahead and run that again. Okay, there we go. Tours for location Christmas, 2 tours returned. So that's a lot better. I probably need to update this because right now I'm just doing a plain old console log. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this with my own function, log, and then why is it formatted like this? Makes it I guess it is too long. So let me get tours return. This is where I need to do my parameter or second argument, which is the type of log, and this would be I would say info. So I'm going to go ahead and save that and hit this endpoint again, and boom, tours for location Christmas is now color. It's nice and pretty, and it's got the little ear icon because I couldn't find another emoji that fit the description of info that I liked, so it's a gear icon or gear emoji. So now that is working. So this is really cool. This route by location is looking a lot better. So like a good programmer, I need to make a comment. So if I ever go back to this, I need to know what I'm doing here. It's obviously a pretty straightforward function, but I should probably kind of do a brief description of its purpose. So the purpose is let's see, how do I want to phrase this? Query get tours by location. I'm not doing any type of filtering or anything like that. So as the tours database kind of expands, so will this response. So Luckily, since I'm doing it by location, it's going to be very limited. So there may be 3 or 4 tours per location. At least in my mind right now, that logically makes sense. So I'm not very worried that this is going to respond with 100,000 different tours, basically. Because if that was the case, if this was targeted at more of I guess if location was more general, I wouldn't want to respond with 100,000 or whatever, an endless amount of responses or tours. I would want to kind of change the query so it's not so taxing, because that would take forever to send that to the client, and yeah, don't need that. It'd be better to filter that down and do a more efficient query. That I'm thinking looks really good. Yeah, I'm really liking it. Although it's responding with this with the JSON object, or an array of JSON objects, but it does not have a name, and I'm not sure if I want it to or not. Right now, it literally just has, at index 1, it has this tour right here, and at index 1, it has this tour here. One thing I do need to check out is that for some reason, I have my schema in my model made differently. So the ID and name should be at the top. But for some reason, everything seems right other than that the scenes array, which will hold all the information for each scene. So the image, the narration text, the weather, whatever information you want to store for each scene or each 360 view. But the weird part is I am not filling anything into that, and maybe that's why it's an empty array. And that's probably why it's jumping to the top of the list. It's not like it matters, but it does kind of bug me. So we'll have to figure that out. So now that is done, I had an old endpoint here that I need to delete. Yeah, so here, let's work on the creation endpoint. So this is a router.post. Well, basically that means this is basically a post endpoint. So this will get data and will save to the database. So right now it's super simple. All I am doing is instantiating a new tour object based on my tour or schema, my mongoose schema. So of course name, which is a string, author string. All of them are basically string, other than I have this featured Boolean attribute that I kind of want to use as kind of an admin feature. So I'll be able to kind of go in and highlight tours that I think are cool, and that way I can have a view that shows featured tours. It's kind of simple. I don't know how I'm going to quite do it and implement it, but I thought, why not put the value there, and I can figure out what I'm doing with it later. As long as I collect the data, I'll be good. So let's go back to the tours controller. So we have to get the tours by location, but we probably need to change this a little bit. So we need have an endpoint to do it by not only by location, but also by I have area, district, and then I think franchise and then location. And this is of course dictated by kind of the specific need and why I'm building this app. I'd probably go a little bit more general if it was more made for the public, but since it kind of has a purpose, I'm doing it by that. So what I need is to have a couple endpoints that I can kind of do, and I might end up using this one endpoint and see if I can do some logic in here to basically identify what parameters I've given it, and based on that, give me its best guess at what it thinks I want. So right now I can do it by location, but I kind of want to be able to do it by area. I want to do it by area, but I probably need to make some endpoints that are not only by location, but also by location in area, or I don't know. I'm kind of thinking it out loud right now and trying to figure out what I need. But we'll go back to that because that basically would be a lot of duplicate code. So what I'll do is go to the creator route, and so I'm creating this new tours, instantiating this new tours object. I'm setting all these attribute values to the request.body.name, to lowercase, of course, so basically I'm dumping all that information that it gives me from the form data submitted, and it will take it to lowercase because it'll just be a lot easier to deal with. And that way I don't have to do any type of weird stuff when I'm checking it, with equality operators in the view or anywhere else in the code. I can just assume that it's in lowercase format. Of course, this is not useful for description, so that's why that is doesn't have it, but everything else does. So area, franchise, district, location, all is lowercase. Right here I have a thumbnail attribute. That right now is empty, but that eventually will be an ID of the first. Well, that's not totally true. I'm going to make that an image that the tour person creates, or the user creates or sets when they create the tour. That way they can say, okay, what do I want to show for this tour's thumbnail in a view of some kind. If someone was going through and looking at different tours, they would see this image. So the cool thing about that is they will be able to upload a thing maybe that's not 360. If they just want it to be like a kind of an image that kind of grabs people's attention, they can do that. So that got that attribute in there. And then in the scenes, that's where I'm going to dump all the file information, all that type of stuff, and all of that. So the problem with this is that I'm doing no data validation on the server side. I could do this in the view, but there's always a way around that. That's not going to totally account for all the cases. I'll probably still do it in the view, but I also want to make sure that I get the right data in the database. So right now, I don't think I'm going to implement that because I'm not really super close to production yet. So I'll implement that later, and that's not going to be too hard of a thing to implement. I just got to make sure that everything is what they say what they say it is, and make sure. And I might have to do some, since I'm passing in basically these raw given data. I don't want any type of code injection or I'm not using SQL, but Mongo database injection or anything like that. I kind of want to avoid any issues because of weird hacker people. So we'll deal with that later. So this takes it's the create route. It gets a new instantiates the tour model. It sets that new model and all its attributes data to crafted tour variable, and then or object I should say, and then you run the save method on that created tour object, and that will save it to the Mongo database, and then we respond with a JSON object that same created tour object. Right now I'm doing that because I want to see it kind of what it looks like in Postman, and see what the response, basically what I'm submitting, and making sure that it's submitting what I think it's submitting without having to go into the database and dig through that every time. Eventually that will respond with most likely an HTTP status code. So something like, if it's successful, I'll have some kind of if it succeeds, if crafted tour or created tour.save is run with no errors, it will respond with a status code of 200, meaning that it was successful. And then anything else, I'll probably do finer grain like error handling, so the user knows kind of why something happened. But I need to do that later, and then this will go away, of course, so it'll be a lot cleaner. So that's that. And this is kind of a middleware for saving images to a relative directory on the server. I don't think, and of course right now there's also a way to run a function. So when they do save this, it's called Multer, is kind of the library I'm using. But basically when it handles the file and saves it to disk, it will give it a kind of a default ID. But the problem with that is it's not unique enough. I've actually ran into like even just with a couple, like maybe 20 or 30 different images, I was actually already running into file name collisions, believe it or not. So whatever that default kind of crypto library they're using to generate the custom IDs, it was not good enough. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a library called Unique ID, and what you do is you pass it a prefix, so it's going to be tour underscore, and then it's going to add date dot now to string, so that will append the date in string format to the end of the file name. So it will say the prefix will be tour underscore, and then the date will kind of caps it, and then in between there will be just a bunch of random characters. And it's been a while, but it should, I think what I need to do some customization with that to make sure it's the right length. I'm not sure if it's like, I think it generates like a hash that's like, I don't know, like 20 characters long or something like that. But I kind of want it to be fairly long because I am not going to be seeing that. That's just going to be the ID that is used to find and reference that file. So I really don't care how long it is. So just long enough. And with these two things appended, especially the date, that will pretty much always guarantee that each it should actually, with the date, it should guarantee that each file will have a really super unique ID. That way I can reference it, and there's no matter how many files and however we scale this app, it will not have any conflicts. Which is good, because as soon as you start having conflicts, that is a weird feeling. It's not good, especially if this was in production. It'd be hard to because then you'd have to start. You have to resolve those conflicts manually if you're not prepared for those. So I'm glad to get that fixed and kind of have a way to handle those. So that's about it for the tours controller. The DB kind of the DB service, which basically all that does is just fires up Mongoose, and it grabs the environmental variable Mongo host that has all my authentication info and stuff like that. And that way, when I submit this to GitHub, it will not. I won't submit that environmental or environmental variable. That way, nobody knows my credentials to my database. So that's good. It's already handling the kind of the error logging. Throws new error, unable to connect to database, blah 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 blah. So there's probably not much I need to do here. One thing that they do say in their documentation is that their libraries are not, or their promises are not native. So before they had promises baked into Mongoose, but now you've got to specify your own promise library. So what I'm using for that, and if you don't, it will start yelling at you and saying depreciate it, blah 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 blah. So what I've done is set the default promise library to Bluebird, and mongo.promise equals promise. I wonder, I haven't researched this, but I'm wondering if Node.js has a default library for handling promises, and if I even need Bluebird at all. I'm not sure, but it's working, and I really don't need to do anything else for now, so I'll figure it out if I can get rid of that dependency down the road. So obviously with each of these things I'm doing, I kind of create these functions and then I export that function, or that basically that object out, or those methods out. So I export Mongoose, and that way when I go into the server.js, all I have to do is require that here, up here, and then everything will be in scope, and I can kind of organize the code how I want it. And another cool thing about that is that it's kind of got its encapsulation. It's kind of good practice because I'm encapsulating the logic within the database service file itself. So right now I'm basically exporting everything, and that's the same with kind of all these other things, that like the controller, the logging, and stuff like that. But eventually down the road, I could have internal logic to each of these services that only that service needs to know about, and then I can expose kind of the functions and objects that that are necessary for other processes for it to work. That way, I can kind of keep all the local stuff, not that I really care that much at the moment, but it just makes it a lot easier and a lot cleaner, and all of that. Makes it a little bit more, a lot better. So when we do that, one thing I do want to do is I have some arrow functions here and stuff like that, and I kind of want to make sure that, because I have a habit of kind of just writing a function different every time, for arbitrary reasons or no reason, basically, not even an arbitrary reason, but no reason at all. So I need to, of course, kind of standardize the way I'm writing this, and if I do change it, I need to make a comment to show why I'm doing it as an arrow function, why am I doing this not on this function, stuff like that. Just I need to learn to work with other people better, because right now I've just been writing code kind of as a solo person, but that down the road will change, and I really need to document my code better. So since I'm speaking of that right now, let me document this, or comment this router.post create endpoint. So create tour, and then I kind of want to specify kind of the whole kind of purpose, and so yeah, the purpose is create tour. Yeah, okay, I'll just leave it at create tour. It's kind of self-explanatory, but I kind of want to go, I guess when I get into more of the implementation, I can add some more details, because this one is by location, and I do want to redo this one and make it by area, and all that type of stuff. So, but I'll kind of do that later, because I need to Yeah, I'll do that later. Yeah, so I think this has been good. And obviously right here I'm using auth0, and I'm using that as a basically I'm using it as a middleware. So basically it will not let me get to any of these routes if I'm not authenticated with a JSON token or JSON web token. So I can go ahead and like kind of, for example, I got my token right here. Now you're going to see it for everyone. If I do that, unauthorized. So secret or public key must be provided, which is interesting because that is, yeah, that is very strange. I'm kind of doing the basic authentication because I kind of want to have the API, of course, have protected routes and stuff like that, and I got to connect that with my view so that the tokens returned for the view, literally using the Vue.js framework, will work with the API, and that way I only have to store one token for each. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. I might change that down the road. But let me go ahead and replace that token and make sure it works again. Woo! It works again. Cool. So yeah, so that is basically what I've been doing for the last couple hours. Well, basically the whole weekend. Yesterday I spent about like 12 hours working on all this. So yeah, my brain's a little mushy, and I have a lot of homework to do, but I guess that's what caffeine and ADHD drugs are for. So, okay. So, yeah, just kind of wanted to document what I was doing, and I'm thinking about doing this more, so let me know if you find it interesting, because I kind of like going out coding and talking through what I'm doing. It's kind of helpful to me, actually, so I definitely like doing it. So, but I think it's about time that I actually go eat something before I die. So I'll see you guys.